And we're back to the top 5 build series. Welcome back to the channel, everyone. This video will be on everyone's favorite S tier killer, the Blight. The Blight's power is Blighted Corruption, a token-based system that allows you to sprint at increased movement speed for a decent amount of time. To use each consecutive rush, you just need to slam against an object or obstacle in the environment, and hopefully you won't have the misfortune of sliding against it like you can in some cases. After using your first token, you can lunge attack out of your remaining tokens to either damage survivors or destroy breakable walls or pallets in and out of chase. This gives the Blight the ability to be anywhere at any given time thanks to his power, and it can be very lethal and oppressive as perks and add-ons only add to his viability. His add-ons very much change how you play as him, and the first one I want to talk about is Compound 33. This ultra rare add-on slows the movement speed of survivors when in close proximity when you land a slam near their location, and it also allows you to slam against pallets and break them with your first slam without having to use a lunge attack on it. During this interaction, you recover very quickly from the slam break, and because you slow down the survivors with this add-on, the survivors have very little time to react to this add-on or get away from you in a loop. Some great perks that synergize with this effect are Spirit Fury and Enduring. Breaking pallets with Compound 33 allows you to quickly build up the effects of Spirit Fury, which has the effect that after breaking 2 pallets, the next time you were stunned with a pallet, Spirit Fury will cause that pallet that you were stunned with to break instantaneously over your head. Meanwhile, Enduring is here to reduce the duration of pallet stuns to increase the effectiveness of a Compound 33. And when you finally use Spirit Fury, you'll almost be able to instantly attack out of the stun because of Enduring's effect. To save time in the beginning, Lethal Pursuer is here. This perk reveals the orb all survivors at the start of the trial for 9 seconds, and because you have some of the best map mobility in the entire game, you'll be able to reach most survivors during this important time. And because you're going super strong in the chase aspect of the game, you're not going to have much in terms of generator slowdown, but you're going to be getting a decent number of hooks, and you know what perk goes well with getting a lot of hooks? No Way Out. No Way Out gives you a loud noise notification when a survivor goes to touch the exit gate, and when this happens, the exit gate switch is blocked for 12 seconds, and 12 additional seconds for each survivor you hooked for their first time, similar to how barbecue and chili works. Because of your insane map mobility, you can easily get to the exit gate whenever you get the loud noise notification from No Way Out. There's also a lot of add-ons that you can use to help support this build with Compound 33, such as increasing your movement speed for each consecutive rush you do with the Blighted animals, to the ones that give you more tokens altogether. These are what makes the Blights crazy strong and very scary to go against, and among some of his best and most popularly used add-ons. During this time in which I was trying to figure out what kind of builds to put together for this list, I discovered my new personal favorite combination of add-ons on him. It's 2 of his purple ones that don't seem to be widely used when compared to the previously mentioned ones, let alone together in tangent. The first one is the Soul Chemical. This causes survivors you rushed past within 16 meters of your location to face a difficult skill check while either repairing or healing. Now this effect doesn't sound great on its own when you consider the Blight's terror radius is 32 meters, and thus survivors have some reaction time to stop what they're doing and hold W to get away from you, but when combined with Vigo's Journal, it becomes a lot more reliable triggering the skill checks, because Vigo's Journal makes you undetectable when performing your rush action, thus allowing you to get within 16 meters of the survivors before they can stop what they're doing. This is best used on indoor maps because its effects are able to go through the floor, but on outdoor maps, tactfully using line of sight blockers in the environment can allow you to sneak up to survivors to trigger the effects of the Soul Chemical. This combination can make for some interesting gameplay, especially when it comes to perks that synergize with this silent skill check combo. One of the perks is Discordance. This perk gives you a loud noise notification when 2 or more survivors work in the same generator, and it also causes that generator to turn yellow while Discordance is active. By using the add-ons, you can cause both survivors to trigger skill checks in the same generator. And for those of you who are unaware of this fact, when you miss a skill check, it removes 10% of your progress that you've made already. And if they both fail a skill check, that's almost like kicking the generator with Pop Goes the Weasel, which is a really strong perk that a lot of players like to use. The same goes for the next perk, Oppression. When you go to kick a generator, 3 other randomly selected generators are selected to begin regressing, and if a survivor is working on one of those randomly selected generators, they'll be presented with a difficult skill check, which is also the same kind of skill check that Soul Chemical produces as well. And if they fail the skill checks, not only will they lose 10% of their progress, but you'll know exactly which generators to rush over to pressure and continue getting value from the Soul Chemical. Another good information perk to use with this Wombo combo is Thrilling Tremors. This blocks all generators not being worked on for 16 seconds when you go to pick up a survivor. The blocked generators are revealed to you in white, whereas the ones being repaired remain red in coloration. With this information in mind, you can quickly rush over to the affected generators to get Soul Chemical value out of it, or you can use a nearby generator with progress on it to get oppression value, especially if you see multiple generators that are being worked on thanks to Thrilling Tremors' effect. And this leads into the last perk, which is Dead Man's Switch. After hooking a survivor for the next 45 seconds, if a survivor goes to let go of a generator by any means, including by failing a skill check, that generator becomes blocked for the remaining duration of Dead Man's Switch. It also causes the generator to become white, indicating that it's been blocked by the entity, similar to how Thrilling Tremors works. And if you saw that multiple generators are being worked on with Thrilling Tremors, you can use Suppression to try and force them off with a difficult skill check, and if they hit the skill check and the generator remains unblocked, then you can still rush over and try to force them off either with the effects of the Soul Chemical, or by just generally being in their presence in order to make them let go out of fear of being hit. And yeah, that's the first build with this Wombo combo, so now it's time for another one. Oppression is being carried over from the previous build because of its strongest synergy with the add-ons, whereas the remaining perks are different types of information perks, the most underrated one being Surveillance. This perk causes all regressing generators to be revealed in white to you, and when a survivor was to touch it before it fully regresses, it changes to yellow for 16 seconds to indicate that a survivor has touched it. With Oppression, it can show you which generators are affected by Oppression because of its effect, and if a generator suddenly turns yellow, then you can rush over to it and trigger the effects of the Soul Chemical and thus force them off the generator again. One of the best generator tracking perks is Tinkerer, and for good reason. When a generator reaches 70% completion, you get a loud noise notification, and you become undetectable for 16 seconds. With the loud noise notification as the Blight, you can rush over to the affected generator and see if you can get them to hop off of it if they miss a skill check thanks to the effects of Soul Chemical, and regress that generator below the 70% completion to trigger Tinkerer once again. Or if it's not too far along, then you can kick it to activate the last perk, which is Call of Brine. Call of Brine activates when you go to kick a generator, and for the next 60 seconds, during that time, that generator will regress at 200% the normal rate, and it will also cause that generator to turn yellow as well. While Call of Brine is active, anytime a survivor completes a good skill check on that generator, you get a loud noise notification, in addition to the normal missed skill check notification that you would normally get. The second that generator explodes, you can make your way over to them silently thanks to the Vigo's Journal add-on. Because the survivors have no way of knowing you're using Call of Brine, it increases the chances of you triggering the skill checks with the Soul Chemical add-on. I encourage you to try these two builds out as they aren't using the most meta perks or add-ons, but still make for fun and effective gameplay as the Blight. And because of the Blight's high mobility and relatively low recharge time to gain his tokens back, he's excellent at snowballing and slugging survivors. This can be made significantly easier with the help of his recharge add-ons, specifically his Alchemist Ring or his Adrenaline Vial add-on. The Alchemist Ring fully recharges your tokens if you hit a survivor with a lethal rush attack. Meanwhile, the Adrenaline Vial gives you 2 more rush tokens, an increased recharge speed, and a bunch of other minor effects that are less noticeable than the 2 I just previously mentioned. You could use these 2 add-ons interchangeably, however I find the Adrenaline Vial to be more consistent of the 2, depending on the survivors that you're facing. Good survivors won't let you get a hit on them to the best of their ability, and the extra rush tokens from the Adrenaline Vial just makes it easier to get around the map, no matter how big the map is like the Red Forest. Perhaps the best perk to use alongside these extra rush tokens is Lethal Pursuer. This perk reveals the orb of all survivors at the start of the trial for 9 seconds, and it's a very high mobility killer. 9 seconds is not a lot of time for the survivor to react to the Blight coming at them. Especially if you pair one of the recharge add-ons with a speed increasing add-on, such as the Blighted Crow add-on, which is the more prevalent of the 2 increased movement speed add-ons. Infectious Fright is the next perk, as it's the best perk to use for slugging purposes. Anytime a survivor is put into the dying state by any means, any survivor inside your terrace will scream and reveal their location to you for several seconds. To make sure the survivors don't find your slug survivors, Knockout is here to help with that aspect. Knockout hides the aura of all survivors in the dying state to their teammates when they're more than 16 meters away from their location, and it also causes the slug survivor to crawl slower and be blind for the first 15 seconds of being slugged on the ground. And lastly, Deerstalker is here to keep track of the slug survivor's location when you finally do get them all slugged on the ground. This build proved to be very effective because of how aggressive you can play as the Blight, with his add-ons basically let you recharge your tokens faster. Like, it's crazy how much power, or rather viability, that he has with these particular add-ons. As this sort of honorable mention build, I want to briefly talk about what I think is the basic Blight build. The perks for it are Barbecue and Chili, Hex Ruin, Hex Undying, and Tinkerer. This build can be very powerful, as the Blight is able to traverse the map very quickly to knock survivors off generators, so Hex Ruin can basically remove the survivor's generator progress altogether. Tinkerer is to ensure that they never fully are able to complete a generator because of the advanced warning you get from it, and Barbecue and Chili is to help you find your next target after hooking a survivor when there's no information from Tinkerer to tell you where to go afterwards. It's undeniably a strong build on the Blight, but really boring to go against and not a very fun or creative build to use, but rather one that's simply purely to win. And as usual is the killer's lore-based build. Talbot Grimes was born in the United Kingdom, and as a child he was very bright and enjoyed exploring the world around him. This curiosity would come back to bite him, because one day he came across this particular plant, a poisonous foxglove that ultimately caused him to get sick. Having come into contact with this plant, it would leave him bedridden and sickly. Talbot was very fortunate to survive, but rather than having this plant steer him away thanks to his near-death experience, it only fascinated him as to how a single plant could have quite an impactful impression on a human's health. In this encounter, chemistry and science in the pursuit of knowledge and power would engulf Talbot in the future. I think Lethal Pursuer is a fitting perk to start the build off with because it best represents Talbot's journey into becoming the Blight with his experience with the poisonous foxglove plant. Talbot excelled in academics, and with his determination he had achieved success with the British East India Company to the point he became their head chemist over time. Over time, he had developed a chemical that would increase productivity among workers while also reducing their need for rest. But as time went on, with this chemical being used on soldiers in the Opium War, there were stories of soldiers massacring entire villages, to which he dismissed as unrelated to his chemical being used on them. His claim to power into his various positions with the company can be one of nervous excitement. Just waiting for the right time to prove your worth as Talbot frequently went above and beyond for science repeatedly. Agitation is the next perk, as it represents the feeling of excitement Talbot more than likely felt over these past few years with his both breakthroughs and freedom to experiment how he saw fit. Agitation increases your movement speed and terror radius while carrying a survivor. One day Talbot was kidnapped, beaten with an iron pipe. His abductor had showed him the effects of his superhuman chemical, with a mass grave from the victims of his chemical. His captor pushed him into the mass grave, leaving him for dead. Barely conscious, surrounded by what his life's work had created. He embraced his death, and what the consequences of his actions had created around him. The next perk in the build is Grim Embrace. After hooking every survivor at least once, the obsession's aura is revealed to you for a brief period of time, and all remaining generators are blocked by the entity for up to 40 seconds. This, however, was not the end of Talbot, as he was rescued from the mass grave thanks to a monk who had saved him and had nursed him back to health at his monastery. The monastery was actually a facade for the monks who were studying forbidden texts in the search for other dimensions, like the realm of the entity, for example. As Talbot continued his research within the confines of the monastery, his work began to consume him. He believed himself to be on the verge of a breakthrough, and the others around him seemed to notice that as well. The kindness of the monks, however, faded over time, and was replaced with skepticism and mistrust. One night when Talbot went to sleep, he would not wake up in the monastery again, but in an opium den, as a drugged prisoner among others. After awakening from a drug-induced sleep, he remembered his breakthrough, the soul chemical. At that moment, a whisper filled his mind, and he began to carve his research from memory into the very walls around him with a stone. When he was out of space to write on the walls, he began to carve his writing into his very own skin. At this point in time, Talbot began to see visions of lush orange flowers, and the whisper asking him to come and explore the fields of flowers. When the other prisoners awoke from their drug-induced slumber, they only saw the floor covered in blood, and the phrase, "Death is only the beginning." The Blight, known as Talbot Grimes, had been taken from their world. The last perk in the build is Whispers, as Talbot hearing the whispers in his mind led him to being taken as he scripted his research in the walls of the opium den, before forgetting everything that he had been working towards. Whispers activates when you come within 32 meters of a survivor's location. The Blight has had an interesting history, as he was in the game before his character even was. He was the inspiration, or at least heavily attributed, to the Halloween events of 2018, 2019, and 2020, with the Hallowed Blight, Withering Blight, and the Eternal Blight events, as well as the various Blighted cosmetics and the Putrid and Refined Serum add-ons that are seasonally available to both sides. In addition to that, many maps have been touched up again for the Blight to be able to bounce off the environment, and are constantly being looked at for such effect. Similar to how I feel about the Huntress, I think the map changes and additional maps that are added to the game are always increasing their skill ceiling because of how dependent they are on knowing the environment they are in. He's easily one of the strongest killers because even if you never land an attack during a rush, you can just get around the map so much easier than so many other killers do, and not gonna lie, it's a pretty fun way to get around. I do think though some of his add-ons could use a nerf from his increased movement speed ones to his Adrenaline Vial and the Alchemist Ring because of how fast he recovers his tokens by default. I think we can all agree that the Alchemist Ring can be very oppressive and should have been at least an ultra rare add-on at the minimum, especially when you compare it to the effects of the Iridescent Blight tag. I think that's all I have to say about the Blight. So with that being said, we've come to the end of the video. If you enjoyed the video, consider leaving a like as it helps promote the channel through YouTube, and consider subscribing for more content. I am Meatless3, and I will see you next time. Goodbye for now.